What up? Let's talk about the Pelicans. And I'm not talking about the ones you see flying above the water, I'm talking about the ones that play in New Orleans. I think the Pelicans have one of the most talented starting lineups in the league now that they have DeJounte Murray. I think if this team stays healthy, it's going to be a very, very interesting season for them. And I do think that they could honestly make a big jump from where they were last season. Obviously, last season they, went up against OKC in the first round as the 8th seed. They got into the playoffs via the play-in tournament, and they didn't really put up much of a fight. They didn't really have a healthy roster, so I mean that makes sense. But it just kind of turned out that way. But I think adding DeJounte Murray without having to trade Brandon Ingram or CJ McCollum is incredible. That kind of signals to me that the Hawks are kind of going full rebuild mode, and honestly, it wouldn't be super surprising if they trade Trae Young at this point as well. I don't think you need to do that to really rebuild. I think Trae Young can be a piece that you have while you rebuild. But I don't know what the Hawks are going to do. That's a totally different story. The biggest issue for the Pelicans, though, is that they lost Jonas Valanciunas. I think Jonas Valanciunas was honestly one of the best things that they had going for their roster, just with the size he had in the paint. Defensively, would get tons of rebounds, both offensively and defensively. So that's going to hurt them. They did sign Daniel Tice, who I personally don't think is going to have the same impact as Valanciunas, but you do have a big there, in Daniel Tice that can help you, when you need it. But I'm kind of just wondering how they're going to run this lineup. Is it going to be CJ McCollum running at the 1, and then you got DeJounte at the 2, or vice versa? And then you got Brandon Ingram playing the 3. You have Zion playing the 3. It's going to be a very interesting dynamic. Luckily they still got Herb Jones. They lost Najee Marshall, which is going to, be a hit as well. They had to give up Dyson Daniels in that trade with the Hawks. I don't think that that's that big of a deal. I don't think Dyson Daniels was doing that much for them. I think he could turn into something good down the road, but they won't have him for if that actually comes to fruition and he pans out to this higher potential that I think he honestly has, at least defensively. So the big thing here, which I say with most teams, is they have to stay healthy. If they have Zion Williamson for a full season, even if he plays like 65 to 70 games in the regular season, as long as he's healthy when it comes to the playoffs, I think they're going to get past the first round. I think it's going to be, hard for them to really go deep into the West, but it's hard for any team that comes together, in their first season to win. Look at LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh when they were on the Heat. They got to the finals the first year, but they couldn't get it done. It's very hard for teams to win at the highest level on the biggest stage in the first season that they're together. It's just tough because such a big part of winning, especially in the NBA, is having good chemistry. And it takes time to get there. You can't just immediately click, which is why I think the thing that the Knicks are doing is very smart. Adding all of these guys that didn't necessarily win together on the NBA level, but they all won together at the college level. And they're all friends. They like each other. They hang out with each other when they're not on the court. So having that type of energy as a team translates so well to when you're on the court, and it will bring you success. So I really think the Pelicans have one of the most talented starting lineups now in the league. It'll be interesting to see if they're going to bring one of these guys off the bench, if they're going to switch up their lineup or not. They still got Herb Jones, so that's going to be That's going to be good for them defensively. You know, they lost Larry Nance as well in that trade with the Hawks. You know, he was like an energy guy for them. I don't think he was really giving them super significant minutes, but he was definitely getting minutes. Again, it's just Zion has to stay healthy. If Zion can stay healthy this season, I think people are going to start talking about him again. People kind of stopped talking about Zion Williamson. And honestly, I think a lot of people are starting to, not even just starting. I shouldn't even say that. I think people are giving the edge to Ja Morant as being the best player that came out of that draft class in 2019 because Zion Williamson just isn't available. Like if he was available to play, I think this would be a totally different story. I honestly think if Zion was available to play and he hadn't, missed that whole season a few years back and had all of these injury woes and, got into better shape so that he's not carrying so much weight and playing in a way that is, really like probably destroying his knees. If he didn't have all these health issues, the Pelicans would be a team that people were talking about to be a contender and to be in contention to win a championship. I don't think it's, just a foregone conclusion that if he was healthy that they would just be champions at this point. But, you really never know. You really never know, especially when a really good player gets riddled with injuries. It leaves so much mystery to think about, like, where would they be if this wasn't the issue? Like think about the Chicago Bulls with Derrick Rose. If the Chicago Bulls didn't have, all those injury issues with Derrick Rose, they would have turned out a lot differently as well. I mean, Rose's career would have been totally different as well, obviously. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm very excited to see the New Orleans Pelicans play this season, and I'm rooting for Zion Williamson. I think he's been going through a lot off the court as well. He had that whole, I don't even know if I want to call it like a scandal, but just like this whole episode with, the girl that was on OnlyFans or whatever, and, I don't even really know all the details. I just know it was an issue. He hopefully learned from it and hopefully is limiting whatever drama he's got going on off the court and could, just focus on basketball and do what he's got to do because he has so much potential and he can be a really good player in this league and it can be really rewarding for him and the team that he's on. So looking forward to seeing the Pelicans play this year.